I just wanted to refer to one of the questions regarding the peak shaving. I'm sorry, it's very small, but the purple line is showing the battery discharge. The red one is the consumption. Okay, so here is like the peak shaving didn't work actually, because the peak was more than 4 kilowatts during very short moment. But to discharge battery, I mean the maximum output power of the battery in this model was 2.5 kilowatts. Okay, so we have managed to reduce only this part, but still there were some spikes and the battery couldn't cover this. So this part you can cover, so only let's say 70% in that case, but all the rest was imported from the grid. So this is how it works. We are always limited by this output power of inverter. Yeah, so if we will have 3 kilowatts inverter, if our peaks are higher than 3 kilowatts, even if it's dark, I mean, if you have the battery system, it will not allow you to shave those peaks. So this is what you have to remember, the limitation of AC power of inverter, because Luna is DC coupled solution. Of course, if you have any questions regarding the product itself, not maybe related to the topic of the presentation, you can ask me anytime. But for today, I have prepared some kind of a different presentation. The first commissioning and usual problems you might have it, to understand the settings of the inverter and when to use them, and also some very common mistakes which might harm you as a person and the equipment itself. After that, we will just go to the service and support contacts, because usually you don't know who to call or who to write with to have some support. And maybe if we have some time, we'll just refer to the platform that Dr. Liu just showed, I mean the Fusion Solar. Unfortunately, if you allow me, I will just start from this second part, not the first one, and then we'll go to the commissioning after some small break. Many of you probably don't know, and if you know, it's of course great. Like every commercial industrial, not maybe every, sorry, M1, M2, M3, and L1 series have the built-in VLAN inside the inverter. When you just open the VLAN list on your phone, you will see the VLAN code SAN2000 and the serial number. Okay, so this VLAN is only for connecting with the inverter locally. If you just take a look on the equipment itself, there are no single button there, no single display here, because those parts are very fragile. The typical lifetime of this screen on inverter is around 50,000 hours. So you should replace it every 6-7 years, something like this. So to connect with the inverter, you always use the app, I mean, provided by Huawei. The way you can download it is by scanning this QR code or visit the monitoring platform, scanning this QR code, which will redirect you to this link, and you can download it for your to your phone. Unfortunately, right now it's not available on Google Play. I know many of you are the Apple users. If you just go to the Apple Store, it's available there. But if you just go to the Google Play, it's not available there because of, let's say, some internal problems. Nevertheless, this link is always active and will install the latest version of this app. Nothing else you need. I mean, there are different tools, I mean, different names of the apps, and there is some misunderstanding which one you should use. The Fusion Solar is your only tool you need, and it guarantees you'll commission your inverter properly. Okay? Okay, so going to the second part, usually the inverters have the different settings, and I'm not talking about the Huawei inverters, but I'm talking about all inverters. So for those settings here, the grid parameters are quite obvious. This is just related to the grid code. Right now you should base on 549 standard, which is especially created for Sweden here. Protection parameters, this is also something you shouldn't really touch because those values are also implemented into the grid code. Power adjustment, it only belongs to, you have to adjust it, of course, regarding the project or the requirements. Time and communication parameters, this is also obvious. But usually, the people do not know what are the feature parameters. The feature parameters are so-called tricks which inverter can do and which can solve a lot of your problems, which you'll have sooner or later. Okay? So I will just refer to these feature parameters, describe them one by one with some, giving you some technical background, how to understand some physical effects and how they works on the PV installation, just not to confuse you when you just meet them, okay? Then you will know what to do after. Okay, starting from the very beginning, you have the MPPT multi-peak scanning function. So many of our customers, when they see how it looks, because it's disabled by default, are asking why my MPP tracker doesn't work. So it doesn't mean your MPP tracker doesn't work. It means like your MPP peak scanning function is not enabled. And when you can use it actually, because the MPP tracker is always looking for this point, okay? The maximum power point. But this is the ideal curve. The real life looks very often totally different. For example, like this. This is the curve, the power curve of the PV modules, of the PV strings, which have some current mismatch. Obviously, the current mismatch can be observed during some shadings. This is one of the most popular factors which are causing the current mismatch. So what the inverter is doing, looking for this maximum power point, is scanning the whole voltage spectrum here, and then it's trying to go to this way of scanning, I mean, just limiting the way of this field of scanning to this, let's say, area, okay? And to find this maximum power point which will be there. So sometimes it might happen, like if you don't have any optimizers in the system, or you cannot have them, because some of our inverters are not compatible with the optimizers. Not from residential, but from the higher powers, is it like this. So if you just enable this function, it allows you, allows the inverter to not to be stuck in this point, but find this point, okay? So sometimes it happens like at the first part of the day, the inverter will find out the maximum power point here, and it will be looking for this maximum power point somewhere around here, okay? But you want to have it here. So that's why you should use this MPPT multi-peak scanning function with the time interval suggested 10 minutes. Okay, so every 10 minutes, inverter will try to jump out from this area and find this point. So when you can use them, when you have some shading, some current mismatches, you can use this function just to improve your yields. Okay, let's continue with the very nice function and very underestimated functions in Huawei inverters. So the RCD enhancing, this is the question about this function we receive a lot. Questions about this function. So to understand how it's working, we should look a little bit deeply how the PV system right now is working regarding to transformer-less inverters. There is no separation between the PV generator on the DC side and the grid itself. So it's always like the PV modules are affecting the grid and the opposite. Some AC is going to the PV modules. I mean the small part, but still. So if you would like to analyze the PV system like this and make it simple, just remove the inverter. And just imagine some magic happens here in between, and we have the conversion between the DC and AC. But if you just analyze the circuit regarding the ground, this will behave exactly the same. Okay? So this is like the general feature of all PV systems right now. We have our PV modules, we have our ground, and we have the parasitic capacitance between. Okay, this is what we don't want, but it exists. You cannot cheat on that. So what this parasitic capacitance is doing in the system, because if you will just take a look on the voltage between the DC side here and the ground, it won't be completely flat. We will have some pulses there. This is the part of the AC going to the DC I mentioned you before. So if you have the capacitor and if you have some AC voltage, you will also have some charging and discharging. So this capacitor have to discharge somewhere because those pulses will charge him. So the path of discharging this capacitor is going like this. This is our capacitance, and it's going through the inverter to our network, to our grid. And here is very often your RCD breaker, which is stripped out unnecessarily because of this current. So, and also there is a RCMU, which is a residential current monitoring unit. But the three-part current for this is around 10 milliamps per 1 kilowatt of installed power. So for the 100 kilowatt inverter, you can have 1 amp of differential current here, and this will not work. Okay, but your LCD will be tripped out for sure. So if you just enable this function in the inverter, this will allow you to reduce this capacitive current, which is tripping out your LCDs unnecessarily. You have in Sweden the limit of leakage of the LCDs, the nominal current. It's 300 milliamps. Is that correct? So it's pointless when you have the system like, for example, 60 kilowatts. I'm not referring to the residential ones right now, but still, it's like if you have the 60 kilowatt system, 100 kilowatt system, the 30 milliamps will be triggered all the time. So somebody who were thinking about this actually didn't consider this effect. Okay? So remember, if you have your LCD tripped out from time to time, just enable this function. You can do it even remotely. It doesn't have to be done on site. So from the platform, you can enable it and it should solve such problem. Any questions to this?
Is it possible without grounding the panels?
Yeah, it's like, yes, of course.
Okay.
Yeah. This is the schematics for TN grid. So we have the neutral point connected here, okay, to the ground. But when you have the IT grid, when it's isolated, here is additional capacitor. So if you just add this one to this one, this capacitance will be even higher. And this effect will happen, even more often. So how you can observe it is because this capacitance will be even bigger when there is some surface on the PV modules. Like, for example, you have a rainfall, okay, and you have the small layer of the water on your PV modules, or there is a fog. So it will even increase the capacitance here. So more often you will notice it during the autumn and winter time than on a summertime. Okay, so low voltage right through, this is the function, and the opposite function to it is the high voltage right through. So our inverters, not only ours, but I would like you to understand when and how you can use it, are able to work with the grid even if you have some voltage dips or some voltage spikes. Okay, it can withstand around few seconds even in such state. So this characteristic is actually showing how the voltage is dropping almost to zero, and then inverter is trying to rebuild this voltage. Example where you can use it. If you have some industrial area, some guys welding all the time in the neighborhood, and you have the very unstable voltage in the grid. So this function allows inverter to keep working instead of tuning on and off again, because it takes the time. And this procedure will repeat over and over again, and you are losing the power you could generate this time. So low voltage right through, when you have the problems like this, might solve your problem. And high voltage right through, it's completely opposite. So you have the voltage spikes, you can use this high voltage right through function. I will just stop here for a moment regarding the PID function. This is what Dr. Liu didn't tell you about the product itself, but it has additional advantage, which is the PID recovery module. Just to say something more about it, I would like to explain very shortly what's the PID effect. Okay? So right now, if we have the transformerless systems, we always have the voltage, positive voltage, comparing to the ground on positive pole of PV, and negative voltage comparing to the ground on the negative pole, of course. So this difference of the potentials might cause some ions from the glass will go inside the semiconductor structure on PV module and contaminate it. You will not notice it like during one day, but after 5 years, 6 years, 10 years maybe, it depends also on climate. You might notice like the first and last PV module in the string have much lower performance, like all of them, all the rest, okay? Because the first and the last have the biggest potential difference comparing to the ground. So that was actually proven in some labs that it exists, okay? The problem exists. And manufacturers of PV modules started to certify their products for no PID effect or something like this. If you are buying some PV modules, you might even know, you can notice some sticker like no PID effect. But regarding the standards, during this test, which takes around few months, the performance of this PV module, which is exposed to this effect, cannot decrease more than 5%. So it doesn't mean it is eliminated. It was just decreased. So what's the solution? If you just enable this function in inverter, it will rise up the potential between the negative pole and the ground and will repair your modules during the night. It's no harm for PV modules regarding this. So don't worry, nothing wrong will happen here, but during the night it will just consume additionally around 5 watts of active power from the grid. So test it please. If you already have some PV installations with Huawei inverters, it's very useful function. It might bring you in only positive effects. Voltage rise suppression, this is what I really would like you to remember, because this function will allow you to not having this problem. Like this is the energy curve of happy customer, and this is the energy curve for very unhappy customer, okay? If you will see something like this on the right side, your first, let's say, reaction should be it's something wrong going with the voltage on the grid, okay? This is how very usually the PV system performance looks like when you have the grid over voltage problem. So inverter is shutting down because it crossed the level of the allowed voltage on the grid and it's trying to stand up, and the whole process is repeating for a whole day almost, okay? You can estimate on your own how much power has been lost here. There is a very popular myth, like people say, the inverters or PV systems are increasing voltage into the grid, which is only 50% of the truth. And I will just try to explain you why. Here is the schematics of the, let's say, PV system connected to the grid. So we have our transformer here, we have our generator, we have our inverter. So let's assume we have ideal situation. Our transformer is giving us 230 volts. It doesn't happen in real life, but let's assume it for calculation reasons. So there is very simple how to become a source in such layout. If you want to be a source, you have to have different potential, I mean higher than here, just to make the current to flow to the grid, or of course to the load as well. But the key word here is your line impedance, and this is the other 0.5% of the truth. So if it's too high, and usually it happens, in Sweden I haven't noticed this problem so much, but it will get you, and it will get you very soon, because of the popularity of the PV systems. Some grids are not prepared for having so many PV systems, and mostly because of the line impedance. So, of course, this value is quite big. It's 2 ohms. In real life, it's around less than ohm, or perfect situation is around 0.5, 0.4, something like this. But to make the calculation easier, just I use the 2 ohms here. So imagine a situation like somebody has a problem with the grid over voltage, and he's calling the grid operator. Okay, I have a problem. He's checking. Okay, 230, fine. Nothing to do here, but you still have the problem. So the problem is exactly because of that. If the inverter wants to produce the 12 amps of the current, and this is for the residential inverter, it's not huge power, it must rise up the voltage up to 254 volts in this layout, which means it's the 1 volt above the limit, above the allowed limit. So it will switch off, okay? And this process will repeat and repeat over and over again. Some manufacturers, I will not give you the name of them, and their service team are allowing the installers to change this limit in the inverter. It's adjustable, unfortunately. You mustn't do that, okay? It's not allowed. You can have a fine for something like this. But there is a different solution, and this is the voltage rise suppression function. For a moment, is there any question till this part? Okay. So I promise this will be like the very technical part right now, but I will go through it very fast. So this is the simplified schematics of our line. There is some resistance and there is some inductance, okay? We have the voltages on the input, on the output, and I'm sure that every one of you will agree with this formula when the cosinus phi is just the power factor at the beginning and the end. After few transformations of this, you something like this. I don't want to do it right now. There is not so much time to get from this to this, but you have to trust me. There is a source in the presentation, so you can find it in your own, check if I'm right. Okay. So, what of those factors? Let's say, what we want to do is to reduce. So it depends on these 4 values. What we can change, what we can have influence for. So the of the line, and not especially, okay? It's pretty much constant. The power, yes, we can control active power, of course. We cannot control the reactance because it's related mostly to the frequency of the grid, which is also quite stable. And we can control the reactive power, of course. So these 2 factors is something what we can control. And if we just enable the voltage rise suppression function, our inverter will use this value to reduce the voltage difference. So it will consume some power, some part of reactive power. So this power will here will have the minus sign, and then it will allow you to reduce this voltage around few volts. And this is the solution of your problem in residential. The owners of the residential installation are not paying for the reactive power right now, or not paying fines for this, so you can easily use it. There is also a disadvantage of this, because this is the output curve of inverter. Each inverter, doesn't matter, you can pick everyone, central inverter, solar edge, whatever. It's how the active power is related to reactive power. So here we have our active power and here the reactive power. So if we just enable the function and just imagine we are at this point, maybe this one, okay? So it means our active power potential has been reduced by 10%. Okay, so your inverter cannot produce right now 11 kilowatts, but 10. So this is the negative point of using this function. But still, after some calculations we did together with Huawei, it's most profitable and legal solution of your problem with the grid over voltage. Okay, very fast about this, just to understand how it works. Frequency change rate protection, it's not very important in residential, but super important in industrial. If you just enable it, inverter will behave like this. So if there will be rapid changes of frequency, it will just reduce active power. This is how it must behave regarding some standards. So just for your information, do not enable it if you don't need it, or somebody else will ask for it. So this is the menu, how it looks like. I mean, when you open it and when you can enable and disable those functions. Some of them also needs to be explained. Communication interruption shutdown. In some countries, when you have the problem with the communication with the inverter, it must shut down, and you can set, of course, some time limit when it must happen. Soft start time, this is obvious, the name tells you everything. Shutdown gradient, how fast your inverter is shutting down. In that case, it will take 2 seconds to reduce the power to the 0. And this is one of the most important functions I want to tell you regarding safety. This is the AFCI function we talk about today. How does it work in details? The inverter is detecting the arcing, and if it happens 5 times per day, the inverter will block itself and will not allow you to clear this alarm remotely, but you have to go on site, find the issue, repair it, and then after clear the alarms locally and start up the inverter again. So this is because of the safety reasons. The AFCI function right now have a 100% of accuracy, so it means really, like, if you have this alarm triggered, you have the problem on PV side. It's not the fault of the inverter. One example of what I'm telling this example on almost all the trainings I'm doing. The installer was the guy from Lithuania, and we spent together around 5 weeks to find the reason of this issue. Because he all the time having the problem with AFCI function. So the reason of that was he didn't attach to the connector to the construction, and it was during the windy weather, it was just bumping out on the rooftop and the backside of the PV modules all the time. And it was just slowly moving this connection. And the slow movements inside were causing some very minimal arcing, and this function was triggered. 5 weeks to find an issue and solve it. But maybe somebody's house survived because of that. So please never turn it off. it's enabled and it affects the safety. You cannot switch it off remotely, only locally, but still, please keep it like this always. Soft start after grid failure, that's obvious. Dry contact function. This might be related to one of the functions you have been told today, which is the rapid shutdown. So if we have fully optimized system, the output voltage of the PV modules will be decreased to 0. And you can do it both ways. Switch off the AC breaker on the board, but sometimes the people do not even know where is the AC breaker in their houses. But you can also use some additional button which connected to the communication port will trigger this function and switch off the inverter. So like very big red button mounted on the wall might trigger this function. Upgrade delay. This is function which is enabled by default, and my suggestion to you as an installers or for your installer crews is to disable it. Here is why. In Huawei systems, it's super important to have the latest version of the firmware installed. That's why you're supposed to always have some firmware packages downloaded on your memory when you're going on site. But upgrade delay allows you to upload the package of the firmware to the equipment and store it until the moment when some conditions will allow to upgrade. For example, the minimum voltage for this on the DC side on the inverter is 200 volts. If it's lower, you won't be able to upgrade it. But such conditions might never happen. So you will upgrade the firmware and you will not really upgrade it because you will receive the information upgrade delayed and nothing will happen with it during some time. So it's better to disable it, and if you fail, have the information you failed and why, not just upgrade delay. Quick startup for short-time grid disconnection. I think the name tells everything. And the last function is the off-grid mode. When you are installing the backup box, which is attached on the backside of this board, you have to enable this function. Because if you want, the backup box will never work. Okay? Any questions to this? Okay. Based on our service experience, I have prepared some typical mistakes which happened not only last year, but through the previous years. I just wanted to warn you not to make them, because it might harm you or your equipment. Starting from the beginning, low insulation resistance. This is what you have to be very careful about. The inverter is measuring the insulation resistance on the DC side every time it starts. It's regulated by the standard. But if you have the problem with the alarm like this, you should turn off the inverter before you go on site or ask owner to do it for you. Because the inverter which will be trying to check this insulation resistance will have the short circuit path here, and it will damage the relay at the output during few attempts. We had some cases where the warranty voided because of this problem, like the insulation resistance alarm was active for several days, and after that it just destroyed the equipment. So your let's say job is turn off the inverter first and then after go on site and detect the problem. Otherwise, you might damage your equipment. If you will just read carefully the manual of the inverter, which you won't do, I can guess like nobody is doing this nowadays, you will find out this information. In a short brief. If you have the polarity mismatch on your PV modules, on the PV strings, you mustn't disconnect until the current will be less than 0.5 amps. So just put some clamp meter on the DC side and just patiently wait until it happens. It might take a while, several hours for sure. So I will tell you how it might end if you want to do it like this, okay? First, let's say two most typical scenarios how it happens and what happens is first case. It's not so dangerous because when you have the polarity mismatch of two strings connected to one MPP tracker, the short circuit path through the PV modules will look like this, of course. So this diode will not block this current anymore, but it will allow it to flow. And it is like the pure short circuit current of your PV generator. So if you will try to disconnect the DC switch during this operation or remove the connectors, you might damage it. So please do not do it. And it's not related only to Huawei inverters. It will happen to every other manufacturer as well. I have seen SMA inverters completely damaged by this, for example. Yeah. The dangerous situation is when you have the opposite situation. So when you have only one PV string connected reversely, because this current will flow even if you don't turn on the DC switch on the inverter. So like the reasonable thinking should tell you, okay, so if I hadn't closed my circuit by the DC switch, there is no chance any current is flowing there, but it is actually flowing there. So the DC switch is off and you have the full short circuit current going through those PV modules inside the input of the inverters. And if you will try to do something with it against the manual, this is how it will end. It's, of course, one of the bigger inverters, but if you will do it with residential, it will actually end like this, or very similar. So it's completely damaged, you cannot repair it. So please advise, if you have the problem like this, follow the manual. Do not disconnect your DC connectors, because this is what will happen. Okay, some information may be more related to designing the PV systems, not maybe to installing them, but there are two parameters in the datasheets. If you just take carefully look on them, you will have the 1100 volts of maximum input voltage and operating voltage range up to 980. So this is the value you should relate to, not this value. If the limit will be crossed, I mean this 980 volts, your inverter will shut down because of the string over voltage. This voltage is the voltage which inverter can withstand, but cannot operate under it. So it's better even to forget this parameter exists. Okay? Just please relate to this. Device fault. This is the alarm which is very disturbing if you just see it, or some user will see it. So should I return my inverter when it happens? Not especially, or not before doing some things. The Huawei warranty process will require from you to make some at least insulation measurements before you are sending the faulty inverter back. So download the log files, make the insulation measurement on the PV side. Sometimes you may be even asked to make the photo of the VOC, of the open circuit voltage. And if you just collect those materials, I can assure you, like, you will have the positive decision of the replacement the same day. If you just remove the inverter before doing this, this whole warranty process will be very complicated after and will take some time. Just as a reminder how to measure insulation resistance, because what I have seen through last years really surprised me a lot. You have to disconnect your PV modules from the EV inverter and then measure it between the negative positive pole to the ground. 2 measurements, okay? If you don't have an insulation resistance multimeter, you can use the regular voltage meter, because when you connect the DC voltage meter between the positive pole and ground, you will see the voltage slightly decreasing through the time. It will mean like it's discharging through your internal resistance of your multimeter and everything is fine. But if it's not, I mean, you will see many different values on many strange different behaviors, like the voltage is just going up and down, or maybe it's not just stable. So in that case, you might have a problem with the isolation. But it's always better to use the isolation multimeter. Okay, so some, let's say, more pleasant topic right now. We are very surprised, of course, by how popular energy storage systems are in Sweden. It's, of course, related to some subsidies, but I want to relate to some problems you might have during installation if you don't know what I'm telling you right now. So there is a system and it has this very nice gray button on this side. And your mind is telling you always if there is some button, you're supposed to push it. Okay? So please do not push this button. I will tell you for what it is for. And after that you will know not to push it. So, what's the function of it at first? If you have the backup box, you can have automatic switching. So when the AC is off, your system starts after 3 seconds and you have your power back. Or you can use the manual option, which is the pushing this button. So you're having your flashlight going to the basement and pushing this button, now you have the power back. And this is what it is for. Okay? Why it might cause you some troubles? It's because if you take a look on the manual, there are 4 communication lines here. First one is for the communication by RS485 standard, and another 2 is enable signal connected to the ground. And this enable signal connected to the ground, if you do it properly, will just wake up the battery automatically. You don't have to push this button. But if you don't do it right, it will not stand up. So what usually happens? The installer is going on site, install the battery, connect this communication cable in the right way, but this communication cable not properly. So the battery is not starting, so okay, I'll push the button then to start the battery. And it starts, and it has the communication, everything works, you just pack your stuff, go back home. But next day, when there is no enable signal waking up your battery, it will just not wake up. And the user is very usually going to the basement, pushing the button, and then the battery is working again. But seriously, how many times you can do it? So you will not know if you will just start the battery from the button if you have done this connection well. So it's better to just check it or double check it. All of those battery packs have some electronics inside, of course, to control the power flow. And those electronics have the firmware versions. So it sometimes might happen you have the different firmware version on this block than this block. And the result of this is the one block will work and the other one will not work. So you will see only 5 kilowatt hours of your capacity instead of 10. So, of course, you have to upgrade your firmware to the battery, but to do that, the battery must be charged at least to 50%. Please try to remember this, because as far as I know, it's written nowhere. I mean, literally nowhere. So first of all, battery charge from the grid, then after upgrade, and the problem is solved. If you won't do it first, you will just have endless story. You'll be going on site, trying to upgrade, it will not work, and so on, and so on, and so on, and so on. Very typical mistake and problem from last year. Okay, so I have finished this part. Any questions? Or maybe you already had some problems which you want to discuss on public. I mean, I'm from service department. I know your, let's say, issues. I know the perfect world doesn't exist, okay? There are always some problems. Okay, so just shortly about who to contact with, and then we will have some break. Service and support contacts. We as Photomate are so-called value-added partner to Huawei Solar and also certified service partner for Huawei Solar. This is the Swedish phone line number, and on the other side the Dharma is sitting. So in case you will have some problems, you can call him. And of course, before, you can use your distributor as your first line of the defense. But nevertheless, here's the phone line number and our corporate service email address, which you can discuss some problems with us. Also, manufacturer is providing official support. This is the official support from Huawei side. The phone line number and the corporate email address here. Just for your information, there is some gate on this email. If you won't put the serial number of the equipment into the name, it won't let you in. So if you just want to talk about something, maybe not related to some problems with the specific serial number, just put whatever serial number you have. Just make it let you through the gate, okay? Go through the gate. Because otherwise the email will just land in spam folder. Many questions asked after that is like, what we supposed to contact with. Please pick one. Okay, if you have one case, contact one support. Because if you will do with two supports, or if you just include the distributor with it, the whole situation and the whole warranty process will be like madness. I mean, from our perspective. So if you just decide to call Huawei, let's just keep it like this. If you decide to call us, also stay with us. I would like to encourage you also to visit the iLearning platform. I will send, of course, the link after this training to register. And if you will, it's completely online exam. And if you will pass it, you will have the certificate of certified installer of Huawei solar systems. You might need it somehow or sometimes for public tenders or mostly for public tenders. There is a requirement to have like this. So this is right now the only way to get it. Just go to this website, activate your account, pass an exam, and you'll get it. It's not easy, but the number of attempts is unlimited. So you need to have a good knowledge about Huawei systems to pass it, but keep trying. Last year around 200 people passed it, so I wish you also to pass it.
200 of how many?
I don't know how many installers are in Europe. Yeah.
I have one question. I think we talked with Huawei and Photomate before, because I mean, for example, for the Swedish market, you have different support policy regarding, I mean, inverters. I mean the where's the sourcing, or where's the supplier of this inverter? For example, for people who bought from the Netherlands or from Germany. So you have different, support policy regarding this. Is this correct?
What you mean by different?
For example, okay, for inverters not coming from Photomate, not from the authorized Swedish distributor. So you have different after-sale service.
Yeah,
parts.
we are checking the serial numbers before if those equipment was sold by us as Photomate or some other value-added partner. Yes, it's like this. So if it's not from us, you will be gently just like asked to to go to your provider. It's everywhere like this.
To the distributor, not to Huawei or
Or you can go to the Huawei as well. I mean, the policy in Huawei regarding the warranty for whole European countries is the same. It must be the same. It's obligated by the law. But regarding the different value-added partners, it might differ, of course. I mean, we are not the other VAP, and we shouldn't supposed to provide the support for others. Okay, so this is how it works.
got it.
Okay, so we'll have maybe some 15 minutes break. Question which appeared on our chat, and the question was related to the backup box. If the three-phase backup box will be available, the answer is yes, but it will take a lot of time counting from now because the process just started. I mean, designing this device. What I can tell you right now, some manufacturers have them in their portfolio, but having the three-phase backup, it's not so easy to obtain. It's because there are two reasons of that. First of all, when you have fully backup, you must be disconnected from the network, from the grid, and also you must be disconnected from neutral point, which was actually raised up today. So this is the one problem. The second problem is like the load and balance, because if you have the three-phase system and you have the load and balance, the inverter itself, it's not able to produce unsymmetrical power with very significant difference between the phases. So if you have the consumption on phase number 1 like 5 kilowatts and on the other phase you have 0, your parameters of your grid will just look like this. Okay, it will just completely out of regular parameters. And far as I know, those three-phase backup boxes which has been released to the market already have a lot of problems regarding this. So be careful, just check. I'm not telling about every, but I have heard like it's not the best solution at this moment. I wanted to present you one website. It's one of my projects which I started this year. We usually look for some materials and you cannot find them, especially, for example, if it comes to the firmware versions, for latest firmware versions for different devices. I can promise like till the end of the month here we'll have much more different valuable materials, but for example, if you just go to the quick guides, you will have the application notes which has been presented today. So if you have any, if you are looking for any useful materials, maybe some part of today's presentation also will be uploaded here, some videos, please visit us here. Okay, I wanted to show you more or less the commissioning process. Of course, I'm not able to show you everything because I don't have the three-phase socket here. But nevertheless, this is how you're actually watching my phone, okay? So this is how this menu looks like when you first log into the inverter. And first, it will just lead you to the quick settings. So you're choosing the grid code settings, and if you have your GPS enabled, it will automatically choose this grid code for you. Time zone, and everything else, I think that's obvious. So we are just skipping this and going next. And here is the process which is, let's say, the hardest part. I mean, detecting all the devices. So if you have done your job well, I mean, connected all the system together in right way, everything should happen automatically and you can be happy and go home. But it's not always like this. This is the part where you cascade your inverters, for example, adding some power meter and detecting all devices connected to the system. For example, right now, the system is looking for optimizers. The communication with the optimizers is by power lines, by M-bus. It's not wireless connection. So if you have, for example, the fully optimized system, you might find some prompt telling you your input voltage is 0 volts. Do you want to continue? But it is like the normal situation. You're supposed to have the 0 volts. And right now, the inverter is establishing communication with the optimizers. Until it's done, there will be no voltage on the output, just for the safety reasons, of course. It might take a while, around 3 minutes or something, but if you have done everything well, it should be able to do. Usual problems with the optimizers and how to check if you have a problem is to measure the output resistance. In solar edge optimizers, you're supposed to measure the output voltage. They have the 1 volt of DC voltage on the output when it's power supply. Our optimizers have completely 0, and you're supposed to measure the resistance. 1 optimizer equals 1 kilo ohm, 20 equals 20 kilo ohms, plus minus 10%. If the difference is bigger or lower, it might mean you have some problems with the equipment or some connections. But based on our experience, those optimizers are very reliable devices. We have replaced 5 recently for like I don't know, hundreds, thousands of sold pieces. So they are working quite well. Usually asked question, 450 watts, which is nothing nowadays. You are installing much more powerful PV modules. So 600 version is coming. It will be available Q3 probably. I cannot promise that, sorry. But also the next version, 1300 watts, is also coming. So-called 2-to-1. So 2 modules, 1 optimizer, sorry. Okay, the process will about to end. With the battery, this is important information. If you have the battery in the system, you're also supposed to have the power meter to use all possible scenarios which are available. I will just stop here for a moment and explain you it one by one. So, just 1 second. Yes, okay, optimizers, 5 pieces. This is what I have, great. Continue. That's like the huge time delay what I'm doing here and displaying here. Okay, so the default mode is to maximum self-consumption of the PV system. So how it will work? It's quite easy. The meter is measuring your current consumption, okay, and allows the inverter to produce only this amount of power on the output. All the rest is taken by battery. If it's not enough to supply your loads from the PV at the day, then battery comes into the action. Also during the night, okay? Inverter is going down, battery is discharging and providing you power to the loads as long as it is, of course, possible. Pretty much simple and, let's say, most wanted one. The another scenario is fully fed to the grid, so no charging at all from the PV. Everything you just put into the grid is the scenario and you want to sell the energy on a very high price level hours and charge it, for example, through the night when the energy is cheaper. So fully fed to the grid, so all the excessive power you have, which you are not using from your loads, is just exported straight to the grid, not to the battery. So let's say opposite scenario to the first one. And the last one, of course, is this time of use. So when you can choose for your own what and when your battery is supposed to do. So you customize it to the day and to the specific hours. Of course, the week have 7 days, so it might be applicable for the different days. So this screen is something you won't see, and sorry for that, because the mirror app on my phone, and it's like in general, is not able to make a mirror of the screen when some password is has to be put. And here is like the communication parameters where you choose your network and you just put the password. So this little dongle here allows you to communicate with the network. I mean with the local wireless network. Or if you just remove this bottom part, you can connect the fast Ethernet cable to it. Without it, you don't have any access to the server. So your inverter is able to store only 30 days of the data, and then after it will overwrite it So if you have your dongle damaged, or you just somehow don't have it, to the WAN one is attached into the set. So from 3 to 10 kLTLs, you don't have to worry about it. Should be in the box. But when something happens, you have like the easily 30 days to do something about it. And after that, you can download the data from inverter and upload it to the server. After that, the data is overwritten. Okay, so the connection with the internet is almost the last point, so I think everybody will handle this. It's quite easy, but I would like to relate to some different parameters here as well. There was a question regarding the battery. So you can control all these parameters, of course, from this local app as well. You can choose the maximum charge, discharge power, end of charge SOC, end of discharge SOC. Don't worry to put here 0, because the Luna battery have some more capacity than declared 5 kilowatt hours. So 0 here, it doesn't mean like the battery is fully empty. Of course, I wouldn't recommend to use that like this if you have it mounted on outside of the building, because during the winter time it might discharge itself and it will affect the state of health. Okay, so it's like, of course the warranty works, but it's the same like with the cars. You can buy a new car and you can overuse it for 2 years and just, you know, sell it for the very low price, or you can just take care, like for the battery, and use it for like 10 years and be happy about it.
Rafa, sorry to interrupt. We have a question online.
Sure.
Can you decharge the battery directly to the grid?
Can we what?
Can you decharge the battery directly to the grid?
Yes, it's like one of possible options. This is available from the portal and from this local app as well. But if you will just go to the battery maintenance, we can use the option called force charge or discharge. So here we can choose what to do. If I want my battery to charge or discharge to the grid, I can choose it, and I can choose for how long or how much energy I would like to export to the grid. It's possible, of course. It's not working automatically, but if you want to do it, you can. There's also one additional function which might maybe convince some of unconvinced customers. This is the DC coupled solution. So it means if you don't have the fully optimized system, it might charge your battery during the blackout. So you're not at home, you have a blackout, and your battery will be still charged from your PV modules. So you do not lose this potential power you might generate. So one of the features which are, I think, very good for this system.
I have a question.
Yep.
Is there a possibility that you can get the signal from the installation that we are producing energy, so that perhaps my heating device is warming the house right now when the sun is shining?
So you would like to have enable the heat pump to work when some limit of
Yes.
active power will be crossed.
Yes.
You can get this information from the inverter, but to use it, I mean, to make the scenario work, you need some additional switch
Yes.
like there are some manufacturers which are providing such solutions, but it's possible to have this special relay on the grid and enable and turn on the heating pump, for example, if your production is currently more than 5 kilowatts, let's say.
Is it through the 485 protocol?
Not exactly. I mean, there is this dongle here is the master for all this, let's say, communication line. So if you are trying to read the registers by RS485 directly from the inverter, the dongle stops working because there is a conflict between the master devices. But if you're just using Modbus TCP/IP, so connected directly to the network device, then it can work at the same time. So this is the way how it can be done. Okay, just wanted to show you this. The status has been changed, and you actually can see it. It's like grid disconnected and charged. So this is exactly what's happening right now. We don't have the three-phase socket here, and our battery is charged from our DC. So this is like the local menu. I mean, you're currently having the real values from the inverter. Please don't be confused when you're looking on this and the values on the portal are completely different at this moment. It's not the real-time system. The values on the Fusion Solar are the average values from last 15 minutes, not the real values like you have here.
Another question.
Yeah.
Does the heating of the batteries drain the battery faster? For example, if you have it outside, like let's say minus 10 degrees, comparing to inside in a garage.
I will show you maybe some presentation because it will explain the problem more in details. Okay, so the working temperature is around between minus 20 up to 50. But of course, the temperature is affecting the energy storage system and there is no way around. The Huawei battery have built-in side heater here. So when you just mount it outside and your temperature is below 10 degrees, because this is the temperature where the battery itself starts to operate normally, it will heat up the battery up to 10 degrees from the grid. This is the power you have to import from the grid. And then after, it will start to operate normally. So there are some heating mats inside. And the system, of course, itself can be mounted even for minus 20. But before starting normal operation, it will just heat up the packs. I hope this is the answer for the question. I see like the Luna battery is one of the important products which you want to discuss about. So we still have some time, so maybe I won't tell about the Fusion Solar platform because sooner or later everyone will just go into this and see how it works. But maybe about the Luna batteries. Let's go through something important. Of course, you can cascade the inverters, so we can create the system like this. As you remember, our backup box supports only one phase. I had some customers having an idea, okay, I will have the 3 backup boxes and 3 batteries and 3 inverters. Can I supply 3-phase systems? The answer is unfortunately no, because there is no phase angle between those phases. Of course, you can supply the free phases in your house, but still you're not supposed to use the free phase loads. So unfortunately, this is the limitation of the system, and I explained you what problems different manufacturers have with them right now. The L1 series, I mean the single phase inverters, this is the information I should share with you before, is the inverter which supports totally off-grid system. So you don't need the backup box, you don't need any other equipment, just inverter, PV modules and the battery, and you can have the fully off-grid mode. It's not switchable. When you just choose the fully off-grid mode and the inverter will detect the voltage on the input, it will just trigger the alarm. Like, okay, I am in off-grid mode, shouldn't supposed to be some voltage here, so I'm shutting down. So, but unfortunately, only single phase support this scenario. Maybe about one more thing. There is a comparison of the different chemicals used in the in the batteries. So our batteries are the solution which currently all EV vehicles will have, which is lithium iron phosphorate. There are two advantages of this, and all of them are related to the safety. First one, when something like shortcut will occur, there is some temperature of instability of all system. I bet you have seen on the YouTube some videos how the lithium batteries are exploding. The lithium is very unstable particle. So regarding the different systems, this runaway temperature is around 480 degrees, so it's very hard to overheat it. And I'm assuming like all safety systems failed, and you have to heat it up to 480 to make it explode. But if the worst thing happens and this chemical reaction will start, there is still some hope you will survive, I mean your home, because there is no oxygen generation here in this chemical reaction. So if you're just watching these movies and you are seeing like this small smoke coming from the battery and then after it's like boom. So this is this very huge generation of oxygen just boosting this chemical reaction. We don't have this oxygen here, so it's safer. Right now, it's a very demanded solution. I hope I can be able to show you this movie.
Acupuncture test verifies the stability.
There is no sound, but
Acupuncture
this
test verifies
comparison
the
of two
stability of the
different
electrochemical
battery
cell
cells
in
and
the case
how
of
they
internal
behave
short circuit. Secure the batteries that are fully
under
charged.
the
Use a
pin
high
test.
temperature
This is
resistant steel
called
pin
like the
with a
pin test or
diameter
something
of
like this.
8 millimeters to speed
So
up to
here we have
25
like the
millimeters
standard
per second
battery
from
and the
vertical
LFP.
electrochemical cell
So
plate
this
to the center
is
of the
what
electrochemical
oxygen
cell.
is doing.
Keep the steel needle in the electrochemical cell and observe for 1 hour. The internal temperature of the lithium iron phosphate cell was less than 200 degrees Celsius.
There are many
after
different
acupuncture. The fuel
videos
point
on the
cannot
YouTube
be
like this,
reached,
so we
and
can
no
compare it, but
oxygen is generated. Therefore,
usually
the
all
test
of them
result
end
shows it does
like
not
the same.
catch
I mean,
fire.
the battery is smoked, already to throw away, but still you didn't have a fire in your house. Okay, short walking through to the scenarios. because this maybe will tell you a little bit more about these three available scenarios. So maximize self-consumption. So first scenario, the default one, which we are using, is if we don't have any capacity in our SOC, in our battery, we are just purchasing the energy from the grid during the morning usually. Then the PV system starts to work. And here is your demand of the loads of the energy, and all excessive power is transferred to Luna battery until it's fully charged, which let's assume happened into the noon. So only in this situation your battery can, your system can export energy to the grid. Then the noon comes, the battery comes into the action and fully discharged during the night. And the whole process repeats. This is the general scenario how it should work. And for that you need this power meter, because you need to have the information what's your current consumption. We have the time of use, which we discuss about when you just can customize the different options, and it looks pretty much the same like the previous one, because we have the ESS charge prior. So everything will work exactly like this, but if you will change it to the grid feed in prior, the all excessive power is going to the grid, not to the battery. And there is also one very important and very, I would say, huge advantage of having DC coupled system is you shouldn't be afraid of oversizing your PV installations having the ESSs. Because if it's here, the line over here is the maximum output power of the inverter. So it means like you would connect only the PV system to this inverter, it will cut out your output power here. So you will just lose this peak. But if you have the battery, this peak will be used by battery. So if you just design oversizing, you shouldn't be afraid of DC to AC ratio around 150%. It's completely normal. It will perform even better. I have seen at the very beginning when the subsidy programs started here in Sweden, some PV installations, some owners who bought the battery, but it was completely unnecessary for them because the PV power was consumed just right now in this moment. So we didn't have any excessive power to charge the battery. So the guy was calling us, okay, I have bought my battery. For the 3 weeks, it hasn't charged for like 1%. What's going on? And the answer is simple. From where this energy should come from? Because you don't have any excessive power. So if you just design it, just consider like when you have the DC coupled solution, you shouldn't be afraid of having the huge oversizing. The inverter will withstand that without any problems. So fully off-grid mode. This is the single-phase inverter and all the components you need is like this. Of course, if you would like to, because in many European countries, and I guess in Sweden as well, there is some limitation due to the single-phase inverters you can connect to the grid. I'm pretty much correct about this. In Poland, it's about 3.68 kilowatts. Here probably is the same, something like this. But we have the available inverters around 6 kilowatts. So for the off-grid mode, it's working very fine everywhere. One scenario I wanted to relate to, because it might seem to be interesting as well, is to use the Luna battery with some third-party manufacturers, like, okay, SolarEdge or whatever. So we can connect two power meters, provided by Huawei, to one inverter. And this power meter is connected at grid tie point control, so it's looking for the consumption at this moment. This meter is controlling what this fella is actually producing. So if the power from this guy is enough to supply our loads, the power from PV connected to the Sun 2000 is going to the battery. If we still have some excessive power, this is enough to supply the loads and charge the battery, this inverter can charge the battery from the AC additionally. So this is also one of the possibilities you might have. Unfortunately, the DC coupled solution have this disadvantage. So if you don't want to have the PV installed here, like on this scenario, for the battery, you will need additional inverter, which means extra money, of course. But it's still possible. I have seen some PV installation in Denmark, like with the 30 kilowatt inverters and charging from the AC side to Luna batteries. Okay, any questions?
I have a question, but it's not about the product itself. It's about the support side.
Anything, please.
Since I'm responsible for our company, Aprilice, the service and support department, and we sell a lot of products to our customers, the Huawei products, and we get a lot of questions or issues, and there might be some question I cannot answer. Do I refer the customers to Photomate or to Huawei? Or
you can contact us directly.
Yes, or I have to take this question to you first, or how's the routine?
It's up to you. I'm offering support. If you don't need it, to just use like you want. Okay. I cannot give you like the path you should go through. Okay, yeah. I'm just giving you the choice.
Okay.
I'm sorry. It was when I just sounded in my head. It was like I don't know, some strange sentence.
And there's another question is about the if a product is faulty during warranty and it needs to be replaced, do we turn to you guys for the call-out fee, or how do we process this?
Yes, if you will just come through us, we will go through the warranty process with you very fast, because we have our, let's say, routes and paths. We know how to handle this.
Okay.
And if you'll just come to me or our service department, what I can guarantee you is, because of our service and knowledge and experience, you will solve your problems much faster. Okay. Because I will just give you all the list of possibilities with what happened and what are the possible list of solutions, instead of going one by one. Okay?
Okay.
So.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, no questions regarding products. One more thing I wanted to show you, because it was the question from the audience today about this. This document, which I will be showing you right now, is available on the page I showed you. Okay, so this is the application note for the optimizers. So it explains all possible scenarios, how to use the optimizers and how you can use them, or how you cannot use them. So if we have M1 series, so we have one input per one MPP tracker. It's quite easy. So in that scenario, we can have full optimization and the same length of the strings, and different length of the strings. It doesn't matter, because the trackers are separated. Only one input per MPP tracker. If it comes to the M2 series, it's not only mainly related to the residential, but still I believe some of you will use the more powerful inverters from 12 to 20 kilowatts. You need to have the same length of the strings, which is obvious, but on the other side you you need to have the fully optimized strings. So you have to fully optimize one tracker, because if you want, there will be the voltage difference between different strings, and you mustn't use it like this. So in M1, you can have fully optimized one tracker and no optimized tracker number 2, and there is no option C. Here is the example like you shouldn't do. So different lengths of the strings, even fully optimized, but still it cannot be like this. And the last one was with the partial optimization. So in M1, it's allowed, of course, because the trackers are separate. So 3 on tracker number 1, 1 on tracker number 2, it works. But this scenario is unfortunately not supported here. And it's not something special for Huawei products. All manufacturers have the same. If you visit the Tigo website, you will see definitely the same application note. It's just the physics, you cannot go over it.
One more question.
Mm-hmm.
Because now we realize, okay, there's a shortage of Huawei optimizer
Mm-hmm.
at this moment. So some customers, they are wondering, can we use Tigo optimizer
Yes,
for
yes.
some installations?
Yes, the only difference in that will be like you will have 2 monitoring portals. I mean, you will have the monitoring portal provided by Tigo to monitor the optimizers, and you will have the Fusion Solar to monitor the behavior of the inverter. But you can easily use them with the Huawei inverters. It works. We have checked it many times.
So the function is working.
Yes, yes. But today we have discussed many different additional functions about optimizers except optimizing. So the Tigo will give you optimization,
Okay.
but nothing else. Okay? So if you have real problems with the shadings, of course you can use some of them. It will work.
Is it possible to get some kind of approved document?
Yes.
Say, okay, for this function, for the optimized function, so we can use Tigo
It's even on the
instead.
Tigo website. If you just visit them, you have the application on when is the statement that
But
the optimizers
I
are...
checked. It's only available for some inverters designed for United States. It's a long time ago,
Oh,
2
I'm
or 3
sorry.
years
It's possible.
ago.
It's possible. But I have the internal document from Huawei, which I can provide, like the statement. It will work.
I think it's very useful. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, it can be used like this, of course. Okay. I'm waiting for some questions.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Is there some kind of information from the North Pole, or what's it called, that the inverter can take use of? Nord Pole provide with you the pricings of the electric energy.
You mean updating it in the portal? This is what you mean? And relay on this based on the selling and the energy? This is the
Yes.
what you're asking. Not, unfortunately, not yet.
Okay.
It's to be honest. I mean, to buy and sell energy, you need to have megawatts just to have it profitable, income. This residential system was not, at this moment, at least, was not designed to be selling and buying the energy and have a profit on it. Mostly the batteries in the residential system should improve your maximum your self-consumption. So just remove this need to export the excessive power to the grid. So unfortunately, the Fusion Solar platform doesn't have it yet. It's possible, maybe it will be in the future, because as far as I see and hear from here, the potential is like huge. The price difference in power here might differ like 20 times during one day. So yes, I'm right now I'm aware of that, and I was learned about this like 2 days ago, and when we were just checking like the prices, like 20 times more than it used to be like several hours ago. I told something like, okay, come on, if I will just go to the casino, what chance I have to win like 20 times more than I invested? But here it's like guaranteed. So it might work like this maybe in the future. But this is a good point. I think we will discuss this with the solution team. Okay, so if silence means no question for me. So thank you very much for coming here. I hope you enjoyed this part and you improved your knowledge somehow. Regarding the products, I think you will have many different trainings. I will personally handle some of the trainings online, so if you'll just follow our LinkedIn page or some Facebook page, you'll somehow catch me on some webinars regarding different topics. So I hope to see you at least online or face-to-face soon. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Vad är det hotellet då? Va? Ett hotell? Säg bara vad heter det?